Legend has it that chocolate chip cookies were invented in 1930 by an American innkeeper who ran out of baker's chocolate. She improvised by breaking a semi-sweet chocolate bar into small pieces. Instead of melting, the chocolate merely softened, dotting the cookie with chocolate chips. They look homemade and they taste homemade, but this home is a factory. Each ingredient goes into an industrial-sized mixer, starting with white sugar, then brown sugar, then butter, the mixer thoroughly blends these first ingredients until the butter becomes soft and creamy and the sugars are evenly dispersed. Then it's time for the headliner, chocolate chips. They're semi-sweet, which is a mixture of bitter and sweet chocolate. Next, flour, followed by baking soda to make the dough rise, and salt to add flavor. The final ingredients are whole eggs beaten, combined with vanilla, made from beans harvested in Madagascar, Africa. Mixing resumes until everything's well blended, which usually takes about 5 minutes. The company closely guards recipe specifics, but if you're curious, you could probably figure them out by multiplying the ingredients of a home recipe to the yield of a production batch. Workers transfer the cookie dough to a machine called the former. It pushes the dough through round dies, producing row upon row of round pieces weighing 1.4 ounces each, one of several sizes the factory produces. The factory then flash freezes the dough rounds for sale to food service customers such as restaurants and hotels, which bake the cookies in their own kitchens. The freeze tunnel uses liquid nitrogen to create the frigid temperature. The passing dough rounds solidify in approximately 5 minutes. Exiting the freeze tunnel, the dough rounds pass under a metal detector to ensure they don't contain any metal particles. This safety measure is standard practice in the food industry. The packaging system is entirely automated. The first station erects the box. The second station lines it with plastic. A conveyor belt, meanwhile, feeds the frozen unbaked cookies onto automated scales. Once a scale hits the per-box weight, feeding pauses, the bottom swings open, and the cookies drop into the box awaiting directly underneath. The next stations seal and label the boxes, which workers then load onto pallets. The pallets go into a storage freezer where they stay until it's time to ship them out by freezer truck to the customer. This company also sells gift tins of cookies online and by catalog. For that market, they bake the cookies in-house. Workers lay out the dough rounds 2 inches apart on trays lined with parchment paper. This prevents sticking, making it easy to remove the baked cookies without breaking them. The dough rounds are nearly 1.5 inches wide by 1 inch high. As they bake, they flatten out and double in diameter. The trays remain in the oven for 7 minutes at 300 degrees Fahrenheit. A turntable inside rotates them so that the cookies bake evenly throughout the tray. A few cookies per batch go to the quality control tester, who, unfortunately, doesn't get to conduct the assessment by eating the samples. Rather, the tester measures the diameter and height to ensure consistency in size and chip content. In the online and catalog order assembly area, workers line the bottom part of the gift tin with a decorative cellophane bag. Then they carefully layer the correct number of fresh cookies inside in a staggered configuration. This not only creates a nice presentation, it also prevents damage in transit. They close the bag with a gold twist tie to seal in the freshness. Close up the tin, then pack it for shipping. This is how to give a gift of homemade chocolate chip cookies without ever setting foot in the kitchen.
Early in the 20th century, an American biscuit company introduced a cookie sandwich. It was 2 chocolate cookies with rich vanilla icing at the center. It created an instant sensation, and almost a century later hasn't lost its appeal. People still crave this sugary fusion of crunch and cream. Dipping the sandwich cookie in milk is a tasty tradition, and whoever started it must have been one smart cookie. Sandwich cookies start with pure granulated sugar. This worker heaps bags of it into a mixer as he prepares to whip up the batter for the wafers. He adds 2 kinds of cocoa. The combination will give the wafers the desired taste and color. A premix of salt and other ingredients follows. A specially formulated canola oil mixture will transform these dry ingredients into a batter as huge beaters blend everything together. They add water, and the batter starts to look like a bubbling chocolate soup. They add dry ice, which chills the batter as it evaporates. The lower temperature is key as they add flour to thicken the batter into a dough. The dough will turn out less crumbly than it would have been if it had been kept at room temperature. A premix of leavening ingredients goes in next. One final mix, and this chocolate dough is ready to go. The worker shovels it onto a grate, which protects his fingers as he presses the dough down into a molding machine. This machine shapes the dough into cookie wafers while pressing intricate designs and the brand name onto them. It churns out an impressive 5,000 chocolate wafers an hour. The freshly molded cookie wafers now move from the silicon conveyor to a steel one. It takes the wafers into a gas oven, where they travel in a continuous loop for several minutes to receive an even baking. After that, fans cool the wafers to the desired crispiness. The chocolate wafers then move to another conveyor, which feeds into a series of chutes. The wafers travel over ramps designed to make them fall into a certain position. One row lands plain side up, and the next lands with the embossed side up. This correctly orients them to be sandwiched around a cream filling. It's a high-speed operation, as a cylindrical pump deposits the vanilla cream on the plain side of the wafers. The cream-coated wafers head over to the next station. Here, machinery moves top wafers onto the cream-coated ones. The cookies move up for the count. Mechanical fingers separate them into bunches of 11. Then grippers swing into action to move the bunches forward. They release the cookies neatly into plastic trays. The trays, full of sandwich cookies, move on to the wrapping station. Here, metallic film unwinds and wraps around the trays. Hot jaws move in to seal the package at both ends. Finally, they're shipped to retailers. But once these sandwich cookies are in the pantry, it might be tough to keep them under wraps.
The next time you bite into a marshmallow cookie, you can thank the ancient Egyptians. They invented marshmallow candy by thickening honey with sap from the root of the marshmallow plant, a herb that grows in salt marshes and along large bodies of water. Modern marshmallow contains gelatin instead of sap from the mallow root. The snap test, to make sure the coating is hard and thick enough. Then, the taste test. If you've got a sweet tooth, doing quality control in the marshmallow cookie factory is your dream job. To make a batch of dough for the cookie base, they mix wheat flour, salt, baking soda and powder, cornstarch, whey powder, and potassium sorbate. Then they add several liquid ingredients. This one causes a chemical reaction, making the biscuit lighter. This cream-colored liquid is vegetable oil shortening. This transparent liquid is glucose fructose, a sweetener. The ingredient proportions are also a company secret. From the mixer, the dough goes into a machine called the chipper. It shreds the big blob into pieces about the size of the cap on a highlighter pen. This makes the dough more manageable for the next machine, called a rotary mold. Inside that machine, a large roller flattens the dough pieces, forming them into a dense sheet about 1.5 centimeters thick. It then presses the sheet against another roller, whose surface is a cookie mold. The factory uses the rotary mold machine for many different types of cookies. It simply installs the appropriate roller for the cookie in production. For marshmallow cookie bases, the mold cavities are round. The bases exit the rotary mold and make their way onto a moving baking sheet that transports them to an oven. The baking time and temperature are, once again, top secret. The baked cookie bases exit the oven and move onto a conveyor belt that transports them to a cooling area. Once they cool to room temperature, the bases go into a machine called the base feeder. It lines them up like marching soldiers to receive their marshmallow filling and chocolate coating. The process does require military precision. Factory technicians have to adjust this machine daily to ensure to-the-millimeter accuracy. A portion of filling has to land perfectly centered on each base, finishing off in a curled peak, this brand's trademark. The company won't divulge how much marshmallow filling goes into each cookie, nor will it reveal its marshmallow recipe. But marshmallow is usually made from either corn syrup or sugar and gelatin. And now for the final layer, the chocolate coating. Not only are the marshmallow and base covered in hot melted chocolate, the base floats in it, which coats the underside as well. Built-in air jets blow off the excess. The chocolate hardens inside a cooling tunnel. How long that takes and the tunnel temperature are, you guessed it, classified information. As the cookies exit the cooling tunnel, a quality control worker does spot checks to ensure the coating is thorough, hard enough, and thick enough. On the packaging line, the cookies go into plastic trays. To keep up to speed, the workers have to grab 4 cookies in each hand without breaking the coating. The trays pass through a machine that wraps them in plastic film. This keeps the cookies fresh and also prevents them from falling out of the tray. Meanwhile, another machine assembles the boxes, first folding and gluing one end shut. Once workers load the trays, the machine glues the open end closed as well. Then, with the go-ahead from quality control, the box's next stop is the cookie aisle of your local supermarket. The fortune cookie is a munchie with a message, and the message is usually as sweet as the sugary shell. But there is one surprising thing about the fortune cookie. It wasn't invented in China, but in California in the early part of the 20th century, and people in China have never really developed a taste for it. Yes, the fortune cookie is about as American as apple pie. But more than pie, it gives you a thought to chew on. To make a batch of fortune cookies, they start with a sack of sugar. They empty the whole thing into a big steel mixer. Fortune cookies are about 20% sugar. They add some food coloring, just enough to turn the cookies that distinctive gold shade. Then some melted vegetable shortening. They pour in some starch as a thickener. Pipes spray water into the mix. And then they add the pastry flour. This soft wheat flour will give the cookies their texture. They add a bit more water because too little of it would make for a crumbly batch. Then it's time to mix it all up. After a few minutes, they check the consistency. Then they pour in more melted shortening and a soy-based lecithin. Once that's blended in, the cookie mix ebbs from the bowl as a hose pumps it out from the bottom. Next, ejector nozzles squirt the batter onto hot-moving trays, making precise little patties that look like regular cookies. You could call this the Wheel of Fortune cookies. Hot molding plates revolve, each one descends and presses onto 4 fortune cookie patties, flattening and shaping them. They travel through an oven that's over 9 meters in length and bake for about a minute. They come out of the oven piping hot and are given no time to cool down because these fortune cookie patties need to stay soft so they can be easily manipulated in the next step. Steel prongs push little paper fortunes into each cookie as they fold it into that distinctive butterfly shape. There are 5,000 different fortunes in the mix at this factory. So you could say a lot of thought has gone into this process. This plant makes 4 million fortune cookies every day, enough to make a bit of a fortune. The folding molds open as the track descends. The fortune cookies, now cooled and crispy, drop to a conveyor below. It takes each fortune cookie through a wrapping mechanism which envelops it in plastic. Then a hot blade cuts and seals the package in one fell swoop. The packaged fortune cookies transfer to another conveyor, which transports them to an inspection station, where many production lines converge. A worker checks to make sure there are no breaks in the package or the cookie. He tosses out any rejects. After all, a broken fortune cookie could be bad luck. A box moves into position and hundreds of cookies fall into it, 350 cookies to be precise. They're portioned out by a scale overhead. Then a plastic ram gently presses the cookies into the box to reduce the bulk. A conveyor belt moves the box full of cookies under a metal bar, which pushes the flaps down to close it. And now the time has come to crack open the cookie in the proverbial ritual. Hey,
It looks like this could be our lucky break. The fig cookie is one of life's sweet mysteries. Who hasn't wondered how they get the figs in that seamless pastry wrap? It turns out that the automated system for producing fig cookies actually dates back to 1891, and it's what makes the fig cookie a snacking success. Fig cookies are a modern way of packaging a fruit which has been consumed for millennia. Making the fig cookies pastry wrap begins with bags of sugar, which they empty into a big mixer. A couple of buckets of corn syrup follow. Then they add an emulsifier called lecithin and some vanilla flavoring. The bowl tilts up for a quick mixing. A worker adds organic bread flour and leavening ingredients to the mix. They reactivate the mixer, which blends everything into a thick, sticky batter. Once properly mixed, they transfer the batter into a large holding tank. Meanwhile, they prepare the fig filling. A worker loads big blocks of figs into a mixer, then adds a generous amount of crumbled cookies for texture and flavor. They mix the two ingredients, then pour in corn syrup to add moisture and sweetness. They add some salt and give the batch another quick mix. They sweeten the fig mix some more by adding plenty of sugar. And now the jam for the center of the fig cookie is complete. The fig jam and the pastry are now positioned for a merger. It will be a neat trick, and a special piece of equipment makes it possible. It's essentially a funnel within a funnel. Rollers press the jam through the inner funnel while pushing the pastry through the outer one, encasing the fig filling in a seamless pastry jacket. Here's the process in action. The system generates long rows of fig-filled dough. And that's how they get the fig jam in the pastry. Next, a technician carves through the dough and removes a few uncooked fig cookies. It's time for a quick weigh-in. This confirms that this batch of fig cookies will be exactly the right size. Now it's into an oven that's longer than a bowling alley. It bakes and browns the fig-filled ribbons of dough. Here, a roller compresses the baked cookies so they'll fit into packages later. An ultrasonic frequency makes this blade vibrate for a clean cut as it carves the rows of fig-filled pastry into cookies. The fig cookies are still a bit warm from baking, so now they chill out on a trip through a freezer. This cool down avoids condensation problems after packaging, preventing mold growth. The trip through the freezer also firms up the fig cookies, so they're less likely to crumble during handling. As she packs them, this worker examines each fig cookie for imperfections, and there's not one reject in the lot. The next step is packaging, where a machine parcels up the snacks. It moves trays full of fig cookies into a sleeve of metallic film. Finally, rotating jaws heat seal the package at both ends. It's taken about an hour to make this package of fig cookies, and it's about time for a snack break. If the crowd is hungry, the whole package could be gone in minutes. But that's the way the cookie crumbles.